it's a false narrative. That's not true.
What are your thoughts then on the current state of affairs on race in America? Has it gotten worse over the years? Is it better? And what do you think is driving much of this today? It seems like a different face.
Gosh, it is completely a different face. I think there are many things that drive it. And I'm not someone who wants to dive like deeply into politics and things like that, but I do think part of the conversation on race is very political.
Mm.
I think you have a left and a right conversation. And I also believe that things like postmodernism really impact how we see truth, how we, define what is racism. How can I know when a racist event is occurring? If we don't have a concrete truth or an objective truth to say, this is how I know when, according to scriptures, partiality is occurring, well, then anything can be thrown in the bucket of partiality. And anytime I feel that there is partiality or racism occurring because it's my truth, because it's a narrative form
Mhm.
of reality or of experience, well, then that's what we go with. We
Mhm.
go with my truth. We go with my experience. These things can also be seen or called like microaggressions. A microaggression occurs when I, can see the hidden racism in your heart. Well, can we? Biblically, what does the scriptures have to say? And so, I am a Christian, and I do look at this from a specifically Christian framework. I always say culture is going to cult.
Mm.
They're going to do what they do. And while I can use my voice to help impact culture, my first responsibility is within the church. And how do we shore up the church, the bride of Christ?
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned, the things you had learned on the street and sometimes confirmed then in academia at a Christian college, even about blacks and their fear of the police. Vodi Bakum, living in Africa now, has said he's constantly having to tell people that what they're seeing on the media is not true, that the police are hunting down young black males. But he says that with respect to this issue, most people look through the lens of culture and sociology rather than scripture and theology. And that's what you're saying here is that the culture is going to cult. Explore this. Is that what you said? The culture is going to cult? Explore this
Yeah.
a little bit more deeply then on the contrast of the contemporary cultural drive on the topic of racial reconciliation to include reparation versus your biblical perspective then through the lens of scripture and theology, which includes the Apostle Paul's injunction in 2 Corinthians 5:18 on what he calls the ministry of reconciliation.
Yeah, when I look at the way that racism is being driven in our country, when I look out and see the social media or things that are on the news or sports people who, I want to say it was James who came out and he doesn't feel like he can leave his house. We're being plucked off. It's a false narrative. That's not true. Like you can look statistically at how many people are killed by police, and what you would actually see is a bit of a decline from the 70s and 80s when there were more killings of black people until today. I think that many police officers, and I'm not a police officer, I don't want to put myself in that position, but from the conversations that I've had with police officers are thinking twice about, like, do I draw my gun even in dangerous situations. There's a constant conversation of how do I have this interaction. And so one of the things that I personally notice is this drive of everything is racist. All white people are
Mm.
racist. All black people and all minorities have a reason to fear. Well, if fear is what is being promoted, fear is
Yeah.
usually what's going to be adopted. But there's no concrete evidence that says all white people are racist. There is no concrete evidence that says every system in America is built to promote the white person. And so if I am believing the narrative that every white person is racist, or as Robin DiAngelo says, that every it's not a matter of if racism is happening, but when, where, and how. If that is the case, if I am always on guard because racism is always happening, well, how do I build trust with you? How do I treat you as a brother and not as my oppressor? How do I treat you as someone who is going to be kind to me and not someone who is simply looking at me as the Black N-word? Like this is the reality that is rattling the cages of our culture.
Mhm.
If all white people are racist, well, then I am constantly, the ever-present victim. If Black people have no social power and no ability to participate in things like structural racism, well, what does that mean for us as a people? I think we're really missing a lot of the conversation, or the nuances and what's created or embedded within these conversations. If I'm always the person, like if we look at interest convergence, for example, if Black people are always the people waiting for white people to say, this is now the time to end racism, or if as a Black woman, I am now waiting and dependent upon a white person to say, yes, I'm going to promote you. I can see the benefit of your brown skin in my corporation, so I'm going to promote you. If I'm always waiting for a white person, I might wait. Don't hold your breath, you might die. Like, no, I'm no one's victim. We are no one's victim. And so we need to have other conversations, because the victim culture and the victim mentality that's swirling around some communities and cultures is, I personally believe, being pushed by a lot of the critical social theory narrative, critical race theory as one of those social theories.